Welcome to the Book Flood Podcast. I am your host, Tom Nixon. As a reminder, please like, subscribe, and share us on Apple Podcast and on YouTube. My guest this week is Amanda Jones. Loyal listeners will remember that Amanda was our very first guest on the podcast. It's only right that she is the last guest for Season 1. Amanda is the author of That Librarian, The Fight Against Book Banning in America. She has won a number of awards, including the 2023 Intellectual Freedom Award from the American Association of School Librarians. In her work, she has been given shout-outs from such diverse folks as Oprah Winfrey and Judy Blume. Welcome back, Amanda.
Thanks for having me again. I'm delighted to be the first and the last. It's exciting.
It is nice. I think this is number 38, so we've had quite a few since then. A lot of authors, a lot of library folks, a lot of different things. Let's remind folks a little bit of your career trajectory, sort of how you got started in all of this.
So I just finished my 24th year as an educator, and I am a school librarian. 14 years I taught as an English language arts teacher for 7th and 8th grades. And so for the last 10 years, I've been a school librarian. We were a 7th and 8th grade school, or 6th through 8th grade school, and now we're a 5th and 6th grade school. But I'm at the same school for 24 years, the same school I attended as a child, same school my husband attended, my child attended. I've lived here my whole life.
So catch us up since the last time you were here. It was before the election. Things have gone a little different since then.
Yes. Since then, I continued to be on, I went on a book tour, and that tour has not ended. We are approaching almost a year of publication, and I'm still going around and speaking about the book. But yeah, I went on a book tour. In the spring, I was at Sundance, and I walked the red carpet for the world premiere of the Librarians documentary. So I'm in a documentary that's coming out, and I just keep on keeping on. I'm a school librarian by day, and then by evenings and weekends, I speak out against censorship and speak about my book and the documentary. And I'm also founded a nonprofit since then as well.
In your spare time.
Yeah, in my spare time.
Your book, That Librarian, continues to sell well, as you say, a year out. Why do you think there is still interest?
Well, I think I wrote the book, or I was lucky enough to be published at the right time. I believe, we're seeing more and more of our freedom stripped away every day, and people are getting outraged about it, and they want to know how to fight back. And I guess my book talks about censorship and book banning, but it also talks about ways to speak out and resist and become active in your own community. So I think that's part of it. I also think more and more librarians are being targeted across the United States. More and more educators are being targeted. And so my book has spread a lot by word of mouth through educators and librarians as well, who look at it to see that they are not alone in their experiences, because my story is not unique. It's happening to teachers and librarians all across the U.S.
What has been the biggest surprise for you in becoming an author? What did you not expect?
I don't know. I haven't really had any surprises. I kind of, I will say I was surprised when Judy Blume reached out to me. That was a big surprise. And I mean, I do have a book, and so I guess I'm an author, but I don't consider myself an author. I have to consider myself a school librarian and a reader first and foremost.
So we've had an election since last we spoke. What's your take on what has happened since the election?
It's awful. It's horrible. But I mean, librarians have been warning everyone that what's happening is coming for a couple of years now. Since the election, we have seen attacks against the U.S. Department of Education, the Institute of Museums and Library Services, Archives, Copyright Office, Endowment for the Humanities, attacks on journalists. And anyone who had been paying attention knew it was coming. They didn't really shield us from promoting Project 2025. Anyone who read it knew it was coming, but I think a lot of people were surprised it would actually take fruition, and that once our president became president again, that he would really do what he said he was, because he's a lot of talk a lot of times. But
Right.
no, it's executive order after executive order, and he is just making massive cuts. And what's at stake right now, what I'm concerned about, well, I'm concerned about a lot of things, but I'm really concerned about the Institute of Museums and Library Services, because even though there have been 2 lawsuits filed against, these attacks, and they've kind of stopped them for right now. I just read an article today in Book Riot about how they've completely taken IMLS out of the budget for the upcoming budgetary year. So that would be the end of any public institution devoted to libraries federally, and it's going to see huge impacts across the U.S.
Oh, definitely. And being from school library world, it's a little different. They don't fund school libraries, but I use my public library every week. I use Libby with them.
Yeah, and what's scary is these cuts are going to affect the most rural and the more poorer areas. It's going to affect Wi-Fi services, broadband. I think of just Louisiana alone, just the library part, because it's libraries and museums. Just the library is $3 million a year in grants that we get in Louisiana to fund broadband services and summer reading programs and librarian training. And that's not even touching how many millions we get in Louisiana, just in Louisiana, for museum services. We're going to see a lot of our museums close, libraries close, and it's really it's an equity thing, because it's going to affect the people who need these services the most. And looking at the funding from across the U.S. is also going to affect prison libraries, tribal libraries. It's going to be devastating.
And it doesn't seem like there is any end to it. I recently talked with the fine folks at Every Library, which that's an organization we all should support. Send them money.
I love them.
Every Library. Patrick Sweeney was on the podcast, and yeah, they're keeping busy.
Yes, and thank goodness for Every Library. They're one of the leading organizations that are helping fight back. And
Right.
so I'm so thankful for them every single day. They're one of the few major national organizations. There's a lot of local resistance,
Right.
because a lot of these fights, we're talking about IMLS and federal funding, but a lot of these fights also are very local in how the money's used and how we're fighting back. And Every Library has been very instrumental in helping us, especially in my area, create alliances and ways to push back and teach us the tools on how to push back against some of these funding cuts and cuts to libraries and schools and things.
So, is there a possibility for another book?
No. Well, never say never.
Never say never. The
Never
book
say
did
never.
well, continues to do well.
I just it
It's a
was at the
lot of
right
work
time.
to write a book.
Yeah, it was a lot of work, and I just actually turned in the afterword. So the paperback will come out in September, which apparently is a very good sign that the paperback version is coming out. And I was asked to write an afterword, so it will have an afterword. But even that was like, oh, I don't like writing. Never say never. You never know.
Well, I don't think you ever thought you'd be in a position to write the first book.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. But I see myself as a reader, not a writer. I have been involved in several writers' workshops. And one of those was, since we last talked, I've actually been in a writer's workshop with Peter Parnell, who wrote one of the co-authors of In Tango Mix 3. And he and I were mentors for some librarians in a writer's workshop that was put on by the Writers Guild Institute and American Library Association.
Oh.
Yeah, so when I do a writer's workshop, I think, oh, well, maybe I could write another book. But I don't know, we'll see.
Has to be probably the right situation.
Yeah.
So, since your book was published, you have met many, many, many people. Are there a couple of these famous people that stand out to you?
Oh yes. I was fortunate to meet Amy Tan when she was honored at I was invited to the New York Library Lions Gala at the New York Public Library, and I got to meet Amy Tan, and I just gushed to her about how I used to teach seventh grade English, and I always would use her short stories to teach. And so I got to tell her how I used to teach her short stories. Um, I was fortunate to meet Judy Blume, and she invited me to Key West, and I went and spoke at her store. And I brought my 1980s copy of Otherwise Known as Sheila the Great,
Oh,
my
wow.
original childhood copy, and she signed it. And she signed it to Amanda the Great, and so like that's gonna be my treasure that I just. It's an awful yellowed book from the 80s. It's like she goes, "Oh, Amanda, that is horrible. It's all yellowed." But um, and then recently this past weekend I was in DC speaking at the Martin Luther King Jr. Library with amazing people. Um, one of those being Jason Reynolds. And Jason Reynolds to me, and I said this in a New York Times interview, to me, Jason Reynolds is like the Mozart or the Michelangelo of our day. You look at
Hmm.
these people these artists who have their, whether it's painting or music but his is the written word or spoken word too, because he everything he says is great. But just, I feel like I'm in the presence of just a genius. So I have been fortunate to meet Jason Reynolds and just so many, like I could go on and on. So many amazing people. And I'll finish with one more. Sarah Jessica Parker was recently honored at Penn by Penn America. She's one of the executive producers of the documentary I'm in, and I've gotten to meet her a few times. She is a library lover, and she just can go on and on about how she was one of 8 children who grew up in the public library. So it's finding this
Wow.
commonality with everyone. Everyone just, they love literature and books and helping communities. And that's been the thread of everyone I've been fortunate to meet. We all love children and books in our communities. And so it's been quite a journey.
Hmm. Wasn't Sarah Jessica Parker involved in the documentary as well?
She's one of the executive producers, yes.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, she's been amazing. And then I found out, it's like side note, I found out she was friends with one of the people that work at Bloomsbury, my publishing company. And I was like, oh, it's a small world.
Oh, wow. Hmm.
Yeah.
What are you working on now?
Well, right now I co-founded a nonprofit called Librarians Building Libraries with my good friends, Dr. Andrea Trudeau and my friend Tom Bober. All 3 of us are school librarians, and we founded a nonprofit. And our very first project will be this summer. We're going to spend almost a month in Kenya at the Jane and Denny Memorial School for Girls to help Dr. Teresa Wasanga, who is the founder, creator, owner of the school, build a school library for her students. And they already have a building and they have some books, but we're going to be bringing them more books, and we're going to, teach the girls how to catalog the books and shelve the books and put labels and organize and check the books in and out to themselves and build a self-sustaining school library for themselves.
How wonderful. If listeners wanted to donate to that, is there a website?
Yes, buildinglibraries.org. Or you can just Google Librarians Building Libraries. And I have links on my social media. I am on Instagram at that librarian Jones, I think is my social media, at that librarian Jones. And I have a link tree, and we're currently we're trying to fill an Amazon wish list to get them things other than books,
Oh,
decorations and things for their library as well, just to make them have a happy, place to go and read and uh, feel safe and loved and seen in their school library.
so I know Tom Bober. He's been on the podcast as well for a month ago or something. Um, what made you all decide to start a nonprofit?
Well, Tom and Adrian and I have been very close friends for a few years now, and we had submitted a proposal for the International Association of School Librarians. We each have our own kind of strong suits. Andrea's is VRAR. Tom's is primary source documents. Mine tends to be reading joy because I'm also a reading specialist, reading joy, intellectual freedom. And we said, let's do a presentation together that combines all of our skill set. And we got accepted, but we didn't win the grant to help us get over there. And we said, we just kept talking. We knew we wanted to do something together. And Andrea had visited Kenya a few years ago, met Dr. Wasonga, and she just said, it's really weighing on my heart how much Dr. Wasonga really wants these girls to have a top-notch school library. And Tom and I were like, let's do it. Let's go help her. And then we just said, well, we could create a nonprofit so that this wouldn't be our only project. We can continue and build and grow, and every year help, a school library. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in another country. It might be here next year in the United States. I said, well, let's build a nonprofit and build on this, and it might grow into something, or it might not, but we'll see how it goes.
Very cool. What should librarians be doing to push back against these assaults on libraries? Do you have some advice for them?
Yeah, and it's such a state by state, or even state by state, community by community issue. School librarians want to make sure they're following their policies and procedures, but also you don't have to obey in advance. You don't have to comply to things that you're not being asked to do. People go overboard because they get so scared. I know in some states like Missouri and Arkansas, where there are laws that can criminalize librarians, they tend to go way overboard with the soft censorship because they, and rightfully so. I understand you don't want to, it's scary out there. But if we start saying, I see that librarians are being harassed if they buy certain titles for the LGBTQ plus community, or with authors or characters from the LGBTQ plus community or characters of color. So I'm not going to buy those. No one asked me to not buy them. I just am scared. That's
Right.
self-censorship. And we're seeing that happen a lot, unfortunately. And that's a huge disservice to our patrons and our students.
That probably at this point, and not to say that book banning and such isn't happening, but that is probably more prevalent, and it's easy to get. It we know what kind of books they're coming for, and it's easy just to not buy.
And I get it. And I speak from I acknowledge I speak from a place of privilege, because I know if I lose my job tomorrow, I'll be okay. And I know there are librarians that cannot say the same thing. So I understand
Oh,
that. But I think that if we are privileged, we do need to speak out against it. And if the first and foremost thing in our heads should be our students and our communities and our patrons, and everyone in our community deserves to be seen and represented and have their stories told and be represented on the shelves. And so to not order books because we're scared of harassment is a huge disservice. Books save lives. And so by not ordering certain books, how many lives are going to be touched negatively? How many students are going to feel that, oh, well, I'm not represented in this library because they feel I don't count? And what does that do to a kid or to someone in the community? So we need to be cognizant of that.
absolutely. So one of the things that the president has done recently is, even though he doesn't have the power to do so, he fired the Librarian of Congress, Dr. Carla Hayden. What's your take on any of that?
Oh, I have a lot of thoughts on that. First of all, the Dr. Hayden has an extraordinary career. If you look at
Right.
everything she has done, her career has just been nothing short of amazing. She's untouchable. She's, like I thought she was untouchable. She's just impeccably, done this work for so many years. What got me was I've seen the email that she received. It didn't even say Dr. Hayden. It was like Carla, didn't even, so disrespectful. basically you're fired in 2 sentences.
Right.
What kind of way to treat someone who has served our country? She has served our country almost 10 years as Librarian of Congress, the 14th Librarian of Congress. It's despicable what the way she was treated, and has continued to be treated. It's horrible.
And probably the most eminently qualified Librarian of Congress that we've ever had. Not probably, she is. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And I saw the interview of the press secretary, and she said, "Oh, well, she was fired because of books she has on the shelf." Well, one, I don't think she's putting those books there, but even then, well, because she has a copy of every book. I mean, that's what the Library of Congress does. But clearly,
Oh, clearly, they just
no
make up
clue.
things. They have no clue. They just make things up. I actually visited the Library of Congress this past weekend while I was in DC, just to
As
remind
one
myself.
does.
Yes, as one does, I needed to renew my reader's card. You have to be a certain age to even have access to most of the reading rooms. You have to have a reader's card. It's not a lending library like the press secretary implied. There's no
Right.
children checking out books, and it's just ridiculous, and it shows it shows to me how little understanding they have. They just make these cuts and they have no understanding of what they're doing and the repercussions and the rippling effects and the negative things that they are doing. Um, uh, I even spoke this past weekend to several people from that were administrators for IMLS, and they said, these young kids, the young kids to them in their early 20s, just came in and took everything and were just summarily dismissed. Like, no thanks for your service. And this whole idea that Dr. Hayden would giving children, I mean, what it perpetuates the lie that librarians are giving children inappropriate books.
Right.
It's not a thing that's happening. That's not a thing that's happening, not with Dr. Hayden, not with myself, not with any librarians. It's absurd.
Speaking of yourself, where are we at with the lawsuits?
Lawsuits. I have one lawsuit I filed here locally against 2 men that had been continue to talk about me. It's been 3 years. We're still waiting on a First Circuit decision. I
Hmm.
did prevail in the Louisiana Supreme Court in December, I think it was. I'm just fighting for the right to have a trial, to bring these 2 men that I feel have defamed me in front of a jury of my peers. So I'm still waiting on that decision. However, the Supreme Court did issue a concurrence saying that if these men lodged allegations against me and they have to prove it, and if they can't, it's defamation. So we're just waiting on a ruling from the First Circuit to see if I have a right for a trial. And then I did file 2 lawsuits against a man in New Jersey who has been what I feel has been harassing me and other librarians for years. And I had enough when he started showing up at events of mine.
Mm.
Yeah, and so he started contacting my employers and showing up at an event, and so I'm in a lawsuit with him. We filed, it's a federal lawsuit. We filed in New Jersey and Louisiana. Um, what I feel is happening is we're dismissing the New Jersey case to focus on Louisiana. Let him come here. He can come here, to my territory to have this trial. So we're just waiting on, I mean, it's such a slow, we just filed that a few
Oh,
months
right.
ago and it's just so slow.
Nothing in the courts moves quickly, but
No.
and you wonder with so many of these folks, well, there used to be a time when I would say they can't hope to win, but the rules for everything changed. And, reasonableness doesn't seem to exist.
No, reasonableness has gone out the window. And when they opened that window and the reason went out of it, a lot of hate came in. And
Yes.
these people are just, they're full of hate. And I, I'm not bothering anybody. I don't know why these men have they're seemingly just hyper focused on me. I don't know them. I've never talked to them. I've never interacted with them online. And I don't know what makes someone wake up and decide, hey, I'm going to attack a librarian today. Someone I don't even know. Um, just for no reason. I can't comprehend that, but I refuse to meet hate with hate. So
Yeah, and the oddity is, I'm going to wake up and attack a librarian, and I'm going to make up stories about that librarian, and that just boggles the mind. But clearly, doesn't doesn't boggle them.
it doesn't boggle them, and unfortunately, we're seeing that happen a lot.
Right.
I mean, even Fox News had to pay a settlement for lying on, on air. 800 million, I think it was, they had to pay Dominion. And, but people, it's just, even big corporations are doing it, and they
Right.
seemingly, most of the time, they get away with it. And that's unfortunate. But I
Mm.
refuse to be silent, and I'll fight back. And if I don't win in court, that's okay, because at least I can say I stood up for myself.
Uh, it appears, at least to me, that you've become increasingly outspoken in a relatively short period of time. Why do you think that is?
Well, if you ask my mother, I've always been outspoken. If you ask, and all of my friends and everyone, they're like, "Oh, this is nothing new. I've always been outspoken." I just was fortunate that people started listening.
Mm.
So it's not that I just started; it's just that people just started listening. And I think uh, when I won in 2021, I won School Library Journal's Librarian of the Year, and I was named Mover and Shaker. And I think that gave me a platform where people were like, oh, well,
Mm.
maybe she has something. Maybe we should listen to see what she has to say. And it just kind of snowballed for there. But as long as people are listening, I'm going to keep talking, and I'll probably keep talking even if they're not listening. But I think also, there was a quote, I think it's Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who said, lead, but in a way that people will follow.
Mm.
And so I think about that a lot. And I try to lead with compassion and empathy. And I think that sometimes that can be a little refreshing when all you hear is hate, hate, hate online.
Mm.
So, I mean, I guess that's my theory.
What are you reading now?
Oh, I just picked up yesterday a copy of Rebellion 1776 by Laurie Halse Anderson. And I had already read it, but I was at Mount Vernon because I was in DC, as one does. Again, you go to Mount Vernon. And it was in the gift shop. And Laurie Halse Anderson had asked me to write the blurb for it. So my name was on the back of the book, and I was like, oh, I got to see it in print again. So I'm like, I'm going to reread this book. It's an amazing middle grade / young adult historical fiction novel about the Boston rebellion in Boston, 1776, and smallpox. And so it's been a while since I read it for the blurb, so I want to reread it and kind of savor it this time. I read it a little quickly so I could get the blurb out last time, so I want to savor it this time.
Oh, I will have to pick that up. I of course have read her book Speak. Was
Yes.
so profound.
Yeah, she's just amazing, and she's been speaking out a lot about intellectual freedom. So I'm very thankful for her.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. For our listeners and watchers, please remember to like, subscribe, and share on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. And again, thank you, Amanda.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely.